It is Kieran Trippier. It is delicious! Glorious! Glorious!
Walker in there too. Luke Shaw! Harry Kane wants it played into him. He chooses Grealish instead. It's Grealish! It's Kane! I think like this has happened for a long time. Here's the overhead kick from Kane! Palmer finds Watkins. Watkins turns! Watkins scores!
Hello, and welcome back to the Gate 102 podcast. I hope I find you well, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Always is appreciated. Before we dive into today's episode, just want to say I hope you enjoyed our latest episodes. My latest one was England's 4-0 win over Kosovo, and that marked the end of England's Euro qualification campaign. And if you haven't checked that one out or any of the others, they're all still available wherever you get your podcasts. I must admit, it feels great to be back. That Kosovo episode feels a lifetime ago. I mean, I've been on holiday and had a few other things going on, so yeah, which meant that episodes haven't really been as frequent over the last few weeks, but I'm back now, and yeah, I promise episodes will be returning weekly, so yeah, good to be back. Now, today's episode is a little bit different to my usual format, and I think you're going to enjoy it. As you'll know by now, I go through every game Southgate managed for England in order. But what you probably didn't realise at the time of that Kosovo game is that that match will be the last time we saw England in action for nearly 10 months. That game took place in November 2019, and then just a few months later, it was announced that coronavirus was spreading across the globe, and yeah, the world changed, to be honest. And I'll apologise now, I'll probably switch between calling it COVID and the coronavirus throughout this episode, so bear with me if that gets annoying. But yeah, by March 2020, it was officially declared as a global pandemic, and Europe was being hit hard. You know, leagues were shutting down, international fixtures were stopped, and on March the 17th, 2020, UEFA postponed the tournament, pushing it back a whole year, and that was the first time that had ever happened. And from Gareth Southgate's perspective, he'd obviously been planning for a tournament a few months away, and now he had to recalibrate everything for the summer of 2021. And whilst we were expecting in the summer of 2020 to be, buying wall charts, trying to buy sticker albums and convincing ourselves it was going to be England's year, but instead, in the summer of 2020, we were queuing outside supermarkets at 6 a.m. fighting over toilet rolls. So it just wasn't what we expected, and it came so sudden. And yeah, England was supposed to play friendlies against Italy and Denmark in March 2020, but both had obviously been cancelled. And just like that, there was no international football, none. The longest break England had had since the Second World War. So yeah, for 10 long months, England didn't kick a single ball, no qualifiers, no friendlies, just nothing. And before I start talking in more depth, I will just say that quite a few England fans have sent in their thoughts and experiences on what it was like watching England and just football in general during COVID. And you'll hear them at the end. So please do stay around for the full episodes, as it's definitely worth it. And I remember when it was confirmed as a global pandemic, it was obviously a worrying time for everyone, really, as no one knew what to expect. No one really knew what was going to happen, how serious it was. And I must have been like 12 at the time. And yeah, just a very strange time. But as much as COVID had so many terrible things about it, obviously many people sadly lost their lives. Loads of people got ill. Mental health struggles were on the rise. It was a sad time. But I think one of the positives that came out of it, not that there was many, but I think it did bring the best out in people. It made society show just how important it is to have good people in it. For example, the key workers such as the NHS, and there was loads of people doing really good things during what was a difficult time. And one of those good people was Gareth Southgate. And I talk a lot on this podcast about how he was more than just a football manager, but he was someone who used his high profile and spotlight to try and spread a change and a positivity to the wider society. And I think Southgate had a really thoughtful and influential presence during COVID. Even though there was no matches for 10 months, he still made sure he was heard. So what did he do during this time when there was no football? Well, I'm going to dive into some of the things he did. One of the best things he did was he wrote an open letter to England supporters in March 2020. And it wasn't about tactics or football, but it was about people. And in this letter, he acknowledged the sacrifice of the NHS and key workers. And he recognised that the pandemic was far bigger than sport. And fair play to Gareth for speaking out, as, again, it showed leadership beyond the pitch, not just as a manager, but as a role model. I can't read it all out as I haven't got time and we'll be here forever, but if I remember, I'll put a description of the letter in the comments. But yeah, Southgate was highly present in interviews and in the media, ultimately trying to be a voice of hope and reassurance during a difficult time. But not only that, he used lockdown as a way in trying to develop himself as a coach and also trying to make England a better team. He spent a lot of lockdown reviewing footage, not just of England games, but of top club sides and even past tournaments. And he also said after the pandemic that he spent a lot of time watching games back and seeing what went well and what didn't, how he could make England a better team. And I suppose it allowed Southgate to stop and think, and what team do we want to be, not just regarding results, but an identity as well. And I think this is clear because when England returned in September 2020, and I'll obviously talk about those games in more depth in a few weeks, but it felt like we were having more controlled games and taking games to the opposition and doing better against better teams. So I think it goes to show that the work Southgate did during the pandemic to try and improve the team did pay off post-COVID. And it's funny because Southgate does a lot of work behind the scenes, whereas I was doing school from home, my home school, where I tune into live lessons, and I used to leave my laptop somewhere, then go in the garden, play football, but stayed logged in. So it looked like I was there, but I wasn't. So everyone's productivity during this time was very different. But yeah, mine wasn't great, but Southgate's clearly took the time to put the effort in and try and improve the team. And also, without getting too political, Southgate was a real leader during COVID for the country, to be honest, and especially when perhaps, I don't want to go too personal in my own opinions, but the leaders at the time were not doing that, whereas Southgate sort of took it upon himself to be a voice of hope for people. So yeah, massive credit to him. Another thing I want to talk about regarding COVID was I actually think the tournament being delayed by 12 months actually helped England on the pitch, because although qualification had gone really well throughout 2019, if you think about European Championships, some players like Calvin Phillips, Bukayo Saka, they played such crucial roles that, and if the tournament was in 2020 as originally planned, then we might not have seen those two players in the squad even. Both players were uncapped before COVID, and I suppose it's like it could be said that with the tournament being delayed, it actually allowed some of these younger players to come through. Also, Luke Shaw returned from a lengthy injury towards the end of 2020, and he was obviously one of our best players in that European Championships. And if the tournament was held in 2020, he wouldn't have been available. He'd have been injured. So even players like Foden and Grealish, they might have got more experience at both club level and for England because of the tournament being delayed. Jude Bellingham came through the ranks. Other players emerged as well, people like Reece James, Connor Cody, and so it just goes to show maybe the tournament being delayed was actually a blessing in disguise. And most importantly, Harry Kane and Jordan Henderson, the main two leaders of England, they might not have made the tournament as they were both got injured just before the pandemic. And just imagine how detrimental it would have been to have those two players absent from the squad, both on and off the pitch. So, look, I'm not saying England would have done badly if the tournament was held in 2020, but with it being delayed, it meant that the squad was maybe in a better place, and it gave Southgate more time to prepare. So that's just my personal view. I think being played in 2021 was actually a really good thing, but everyone's got different opinions. People might disagree, but that's my personal opinion. So like I say, international football was put on a hold because of lockdown and the coronavirus. But after 10 long months of no games, no friendlies, and no qualifiers, England finally returned to the pitch in September 2020 in the UEFA Nations League, and it came Iceland away, behind closed doors, and obviously the games with no fans, and it came with very strict COVID protocols. So when England returned in September, it was for their second Nations League campaign. England obviously did well in the first time, so they remained in League A. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about each game because I'll do that in the coming weeks, but I do want to talk about what it was like watching England from afar and on the telly with no fans. And as much as it was still behind closed doors, it was great to have England back playing again, even if it was a bit strange and a bit unfamiliar. But my own personal memories, I remember in the previous Nations League campaign, which were towards the end of 2018, me and my family would all get together and watch the games together, usually at my nana's house, and we'd all sit around the sofa watching England. Obviously, when these games returned, we still weren't really allowed to socialise in people's households. So that was what I missed the most, being as a big family watching England. But I think another thing for me was seeing the banners at Wembley and the cardboard cutouts that they had. It just didn't feel right for me, and it was just a bit horrible to look at. I know why they did it, obviously trying to make it have less empty seats, try and make it look better, but I just don't think it did. I think it made it look worse, personally. Seeing cardboard cutouts of people, it's a bit like, it just don't feel right. But the worst one for me was the crowd noise. And it was funny because I don't know if it was just our telly or anyone else's, but there was always a delay with the noise. So, I don't know, say someone like Kane would have a shot and it would go well wide. Not that is Harry Kane usually scores, but say he had a shot and it goes wide. And like 5 seconds later, you'll get the fake sound as it went well wide. So that was something that I found amusing, but also frustrating at the same time. But it was funny because the delay was always, it's strange. And also, I think some of the crowd noise was a bit over exuberant at times. But all in all, I think it showed that football without the fans was nothing and still is nothing. And it goes to show just how important sport in general is for people. And it was tough not going to the games and seeing no one there. But I suppose it was just the way it was. And I think I got used to it more. I wouldn't say I got used to it, but as the pandemic went on, I gradually adapted to watching games behind closed doors. Everyone's experiences of COVID and football during COVID is different. And I've spent a lot of time talking about my experiences and sort of the context behind what happened during COVID, both for England and for Southgate. So I thought it's time to hear what other fans have to say. So as mentioned before, quite a few England fans have sent in audio messages relating to watching England, but also football in general during the COVID pandemic. And really appreciate everyone who sent in a message. Some of these fans you might know, some of these you might not, but all of them speak really well. And again, real thanks to them all for sending in these messages. So I hope you look forward to hearing what these fans have to say.
Hey Charlie, Russell from Three Lions Podcast here. COVID, eh? Goes without saying. Was a strange time. So much confusion on so many levels. Work, school, general life. All thrown out of the window, wasn't it? All the rituals, all our traditions. Just gone for a while. I guess once people adjusted to the situation, they began to realise what they missed. And obviously as football fans, we all began to miss that. I was fortunate from an England perspective that I went to the last game that England played with fans away to Kosovo in November of 2019. And I think there was like small chatter about the disease at the time, but we just didn't know the reality of it. And it'd be June 2021 before I got to see the team again live. But between those two games, what do I remember? Well, I guess Euro 96, that was rerun on the telly, wasn't it? I can't remember if it was BBC or ITV. There were Nations League games that had to be played. I remember watching Jude Bellingham make his debut on the telly in a deserted Wembley. That was just odd, wasn't it? Football in empty stadiums was something that none of us really adjusted to. And I remember as well, England, they announced Euro 2020 warm-up games. There was a game away to Austria in Vienna, which I was looking forward to. Then they also had Romania at Villa Park. Both of those were subsequently cancelled. And then there was the announcement of the tournament being postponed too. And in a way, strangely, that was a moment when I realised how serious this really all was. But Romania and Austria, we would play them, and we'd play them at Middlesbrough in the warm-ups to the finals. That was strange, having to sit apart from everyone whilst wearing a face mask. I think the Riverside is, it's about 30,000, and there was only 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 of us in there watching those two games. And obviously the finals came around, sitting in Wembley for those group games, all socially distancing. That was strange. But as it progressed and as England did, the crowds increased. And of course the final, so many people inside Wembley that night. I'd managed to avoid picking up COVID throughout the tournament, but a couple of days later after that final, I tested after feeling pretty ropey and confirmation that I'd succumbed to the Wembley variant, as it became known. But one thing I think needs to be mentioned and ties in nicely with your podcast, without getting too political, the country needed leaders at the time, and Gareth Southgate stood up and he had his open letter published, which was particularly powerful at the time. He struck the tone spot on. Keep up the good work.
Hi there, listeners of the Gate 102 podcast. Alfie Wilson, Oxford England fan. Regarding my memories of watching England during COVID, I think the overwhelming thing for me are the away days that we missed out on. In our Nations League group in the tail end of 2020, I remember being really excited about that because Denmark, Iceland and Belgium were all places that we hadn't been to for a long, long time. Iceland in particular, which also would have been a new country tick for me. Still haven't done it. But I remember being particularly gutted at missing out on those away games. And then going into the new year, there was the Albania away game in March, another country we hadn't played for some time in their new national stadium, so that would have been great fun. There's the home game against Poland that break as well, where Harry Maguire got a winner with about 6 or 7 minutes left, which was crucial in getting us a stranglehold over the group for World Cup qualifying. So that would have been a great atmosphere had COVID not happened. Other memories are, I mean, there were loads of new debuts at the time. Phillips coming into the side, establishing himself. Calvert-Lewin made his debut. Connor Cody did. Mings, I don't think made his debut in COVID because he played in the Bulgaria match marked by racism in 2019. But he started to kind of establish himself as part of the fold. Saka made his debut in that Wales friendly. Reece James around that time too. Ings made his return and briefly and got a goal against Wales. So I remember that. Also remember I was quite annoyed that we returned to a 5 at the back against Belgium for those Nations League games. I think we had a 5 at the back anyway. And it came after Southgate had kind of said, part of our transition to becoming an elite team in Europe as a proper tournament favourite was going to 4 at the back. We did that against Spain and Croatia in 2018. So I remember being slightly disappointed by that. But all in all, I think we had decent form at the time, particularly had a good March break in the World Cup qualifiers, and that kind of got me excited for the Euros. And kind of really thought we were a tournament favourite by that stage. I don't quite remember if we knew by March what the ticketing situation would be for the Euros, but I remember being A, quite worried about that, and B, quite despondent about it. I mean, I kind of still thought that it would be behind closed doors, so it was a happy surprise to end up going to the Euros in the end. And I know officially that England 2 Germany 0 game was at 30-40% capacity, maybe a bit more. But that's the loudest and the fullest I've ever felt Wembley being. And one of the best days ever.
Hello, mate. It's Ryan Morris here. The best way to describe my experience, probably echo everyone else's experience, really. Watching the games behind closed doors and taking that sense of normality away from everybody was quite frustrating. Out of memory, there was a whole Nations League campaign behind closed doors with some real tasty away trips, which unfortunately we all missed out on, as well as a few home friendly internationals, which would have been, the atmosphere at Wembley would have been a lot better than perhaps maybe they are normally at Wembley. So to miss out on those sorts of games was quite frustrating. But it's not as frustrating as the postponement of the major tournament that summer. Euro 2020 obviously being put back a year meant that we missed out on watching that time round. That being said, the BBC and ITV did put on some classic England games during that summer. I distinctly remember ITV showing every single game of Euro 96, which me and my son sat down and watched religiously. And it was lovely to share with him my experiences of that summer. I was a 12-year-old lad during Euro 96. And to share that experience with him and him to ask the questions and whatever about that particular summer was pretty unique. So we wouldn't have done that without the pandemic taking place. Also, BBC did show a couple of classic Italian 90 games as well as I believe England versus Croatia in Euro 2004 and the group game against Argentina in 2002. So yes, our England viewing throughout that summer was padded up with some classic moments and some really good games to relive. So it's fantastic, really. As for the current crop and the season 2020-2021, again, as the season progressed, it was quite evident and quite apparent that games behind closed doors was here to stay for a while. So as we past Christmas, and I think that we missed a couple of World Cup qualifiers as well due to the pandemic. I think there was a home game at Poland, and I distinctly remember that game because I had my jab just before that game, and I felt terrible as I was watching it. So the England-Poland game, again, another game would have been fantastic to go to. I think the Polish bring an awful lot of decent away end, and that would have been a great one to experience. But not to be. But going back a couple of international games, my son and I entered my son into a FA competition to become a virtual mascot. It was for the October games of that pandemic. So home to Wales, Belgium away, I believe, and Iceland at home. Sorry, Republic of Ireland at home, Belgium away, and Iceland at home. And so my son had the pleasure of interviewing 4 England players: Jordan Henderson, Declan Rice, Eric Dyer, and to top it all off, the captain himself, Harry Kane, came on the screen, and that is a moment that, again, without the pandemic, we'd never have experienced, and it was just magic, absolutely magic. I don't know how my son, who was 7 at the time, composed himself to ask the questions he did. Because I certainly lost it, absolutely lost it. So a lovely moment, and a moment which we would always remember. I've documented it and often watch the videos back, purely because it is once in a lifetime opportunity which we wouldn't have got hadn't it been for the pandemic.
Hi, my name's Kunal. I'm from England Block 109, and I'm just going to have a chat about what it was like watching England during the COVID times. Obviously, that was an odd time when we could watch football on the TV. We could see our flags displayed in the stadiums, but we couldn't actually be at the stadiums. And having been to every England game for a number of years without missing a game, this was a bit of a odd feeling and not the usual. And we weren't able to go to the football, but it was something that was out of our hands. However, one thing I will mention is September 2020. Now, when things had started to open up slightly, you were able to travel to some places, but you weren't able to travel to other places. We had Nations League matches against Iceland and Denmark. Now, a number of us had already booked travel many months before this restrictions was even a thing. And when the time came, we had still fully intended to travel out to Iceland and Denmark. Of course, we had hoped by then we would be able to go to the matches, but it turned out we wouldn't have been able to go to the matches. Iceland, when it came to it, I think a few weeks before they put on more restrictions, meaning you would have to isolate before and after. So we couldn't travel to Iceland and we didn't. However, there was a number of us. We still went to Denmark. We went to Copenhagen like a normal away trip. We had booked it many months before, and we still planned to go ahead with it. We went to Copenhagen. In all aspects, it was like a normal away trip. We all met up in a bar. There was probably about 10-15 of us together, but then in a broader group of England fans, there was maybe 50 to 60 England fans in the same bar or the bars nearby, watching our match against Denmark. Now, we had flags out, outside the pub. We were in the bar singing. It was everything you would expect from an away trip, and we enjoyed our time out there in Copenhagen for that match. And we could go outside the stadium to have a look at it, but obviously we could not go in. We enjoyed the break in Copenhagen like an away trip. all that was missing was actually being able to go to the stadium to, attend the game. But the fact that quite a few of us went traveled out, it made it an enjoyable trip, and a different kind of England away day trip. And I hope that sort of trip doesn't happen again where we can't go to the football, but many people do travel to these England away trips, don't always have tickets, and they enjoy the other aspects of tickets. So I guess for me personally, I can say it was like going to an England away trip but not having a ticket for the game. Still worth the trip, still enjoyable, but it was an odd time during the COVID times, and that was one experience me and a group of friends had when we travelled anyway.
Hi, Charlie. I just want to say thank you very much for having me on your podcast about COVID-19 and the England being the main topic here. So yeah, being a young child during lockdown, it wasn't easy. Obviously, learning from home wasn't the same as being your typical school year. Your home became a classroom. It became the cafeteria. It became the playground. It became your social hub at the same time. Your lessons kind of arrive through Google Classroom. You had to join them every morning, like it would be a school day. But yeah, it's just like the rhythm of maybe just like getting to your lessons. Obviously, it wasn't the same, but obviously emotionally, it was different for a young child. It was definitely a mixed bag. Confusion about why the world had been changed so quickly. Stories in the news sounded scary or abstract, and even fear and worry about like the actual COVID-19, the illness. And if family members got it, you'd be quite concerned and worried for them. It was, you were scared. I know I was. It wasn't easy, but obviously just turning to the football side of things, watching England and Arsenal from home during lockdowns, it was obviously a unique experience. Having empty stadiums and reduced crowd noise meant that obviously the atmosphere of a match felt different. And the action was kind of only unfolding through the commentators, not the fans raw, or, you know what I mean? It wasn't the same. But for a young fan like myself, obviously getting to Arsenal games, it's no different really now. Obviously, it is tough to get to them, but obviously your room kind of turns into a temporary stadium. It brought me and my family together, definitely at the time, being able to watch Arsenal, having that sport there. It's sort of, you could escape for 90 minutes. But the absence of like real fans, it was jarring. But it kind of sharpened your attention to actually like the actual detail of the game, like the tactical detail, rather than the fans, sort of taking your attention away from that. But it was a very strange time, and just, I don't think a lot of fans definitely struggled. Obviously, I have friends that support Blackpool, and like, obviously Stockport yourself. It must have been very tough to not go to them games. And obviously, I went to a few Blackpool games when I was younger, and not being able to just go and sit down and watch a game for 90 minutes, it wasn't easy. But at least football was still playing. Well, supporting England as a national team, and supporting Arsenal as a club, offer two completely distinct lenses. England's national setup, carried a sense of identity, especially when games telegraphed like a shared national moment. Like with Euro 2021, for example, you got the semi-final versus Denmark, and obviously Harry Kane, his penalty being saved, and then he goes and scores a rebound. It was a special moment. Obviously, fans were lucky enough to experience that. Obviously, we were sort of still going through the pandemic then, if I remember. Obviously, we weren't in a lockdown then, but having that in England as well, it definitely made it a bit more special. Obviously, what I could say, the home environment definitely amplified the national pride. But it was definitely a special tournament that, given what the country and obviously across Europe had gone through. So that tournament was definitely special for all fans. Just gutted we ended up losing it in the end. But, on the other hand, Arsenal, it was obviously it's more day to day. It's like a roller coaster, you know what I mean? Especially we were quite bad at the time. We weren't really consistent with wins like we are now. It wasn't easy to watch them, but that isn't the point. It was just being able to watch your team for 90 minutes and play. But games, it was, fans could build their own rituals around the club schedule, and you're at home. You're always going to be updated with the Arsenal's news, etc. But a bit more in Euro 2021. Obviously, it was played in 21 and 21, but obviously it was branded as Euro 2020, and obviously it was moved because of the pandemic. But it was a sense of anticipation. It was a nation's long wait for a major tournament's final triumph. So many special moments throughout that. Obviously, there was a heartbreak of the penalties. Yeah, it was widely felt. Obviously, a lot of England supporters felt a renewed sense of pride in the team's performance, and it wasn't an easy time. And I'm sure the players, didn't find it easy either. After all, they are also just players at the end of the day. Anyways, that's my short little message. Thank you very much, Charlie, for letting me on your podcast. Goodbye.